you who might just be joining us, our third panel, very exciting, is overcoming challenges and obstacles. We've been talking a lot about challenges and obstacles, but let me go ahead and bring in our final panel for this special Charter Schools Week Action series. Sean Hartnett, founder and CEO, Statesman College Preparatory Academy, John True, president and board member, West Virginia Academy, and Marie Turciato, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, as a Paisan, executive director of the Palm Beach Maritime Academy. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see you all, and I am so delighted to have you with us, although a little bit bittersweet, because your topic really is about kind of some of the obstacles that continue really in the charter school world. And each of you we invited, there could have been 1,000 more to talk about what it is that, what you all have endured, because this is unapologetically a Charter School Action Series event. We don't do them all the time, but charter schools are, in fact, part of the larger opportunity agenda, and we're proud to shout out, highlight, and celebrate you when we can. So, Sean, I want to start with you, and then I'll go and do a bigger introduction with everybody else. And what struck me is when I first met you, you'd founded this all-boys charter middle school in DC. You've got 20 years of experience at all levels of coaching and training and leadership. You have been coordinating on behalf of the movement, other people, a challenge to local city leaders who sometimes don't take seriously the importance of autonomy and flexibility for charters and equity. So what have you faced in DC recently, and what can we learn for other communities and states? Because you really, I just want to tell everybody, a shout out to Sean. He stopped a train working with a number of other people, including Michelle, who you just met. He stopped a train that was basically overrunning charters by becoming active. And so I'd love you to tell a little bit about what's been happening.
Well, one, thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank you for everyone who is here. I serve Black and brown boys in Washington, D.C., a city where the context for charter schools has been good and has gotten more difficult over time, as we've watched as nationally attacks on autonomy, parent autonomy and parent choice in particular, has continued to grow. And so I would say that in Washington, D.C., the political arena has just shifted. I think that when I came to this city some 12 years ago now to support the development of leaders in the space, to support other people who were going into school leadership, there was significantly, I think that the entire city council was positively dispositioned towards charter schools. And there was a lot of talk about what they had done well. There was certainly a less, the data that was being used in a way to support the actual work that was going on. It's very clear in Washington, D.C., when you look at the students who need it the most, what kinds of schools have served them best. And over the course of the last 10 years, that has just shifted. That has just shifted significantly. And I will say again, the data that is being used is more, charters and, the district is actually outperforming charters. And in some way of looking at the data, you're right. But when you are looking at apples versus apples and oranges versus oranges, that story gets really, it starts to look like it looked 10 years ago, because the data hasn't shifted that much. And so I think that just because it is such a political arena, I felt good about taking the amount of experience that I had, the track record that I had, and directing it right back at, no, we need to continue to do the work of opening schools that serve populations of students who have continued to be underserved. And so I aimed it right at Black and brown boys in the most difficult wards. And, we got hell. And many people will say that with the kind of experience, track record that I had, the social and political capital that I had built in this city, that it should have been easy for me and Michelle, right? To, well-known, well-respected leaders to come in. And we are as the funders would say, you're an easy bet to make. Like, you're not a hard bet. Like, we're going to support you. We know that we're going to get a good school out of you, probably several of them. And we got, as we would say, to be, our asses handed to us in every way, shape, or form to get these schools opened. And so the context has changed. It's made the work harder. You should know that for the schools, we were very direct in our leadership and saying, no, we know what to do. We know how to make this good. We're going to do it our way. And that was up against a cultural environment in DC where a lot of charter schools were getting the message that you've got to start a certain way and you've got to surrender some autonomies and you've got to start your school in a way that allows us for us to monitor you and to direct your action more. And we were adamantly opposed to that. And so I think that has definitely had an impact on us.
Thank you for that. It really has been an interesting journey to watch. And I'm hoping that will begin to change the curve of support because as Kevin Chavis, who was with us in the first top of the hour, will tell you, and when he helped create the charter law, the city didn't have many good schools at all. And the only ones they did have, they weren't where they were really needed the most. So another, thank you so much, Sean. Let me transition and come back to you in a few minutes to Marie. Marie, who came from New York City and came down to Palm Beach to serve at the Palm Beach Maritime Academy and has had those challenges. By the way, they were voted the best public school in Palm Beach County. Yay, exactly. But however, the challenge that really caught our eye, which has begun to be pushed here and elsewhere across the country, is you shouldn't get the money you deserve. And so in some states, it's already 70, 80% in most states, which is a challenge in and of itself and one we need to fix. But Marie, they basically stopped funding you at where they were supposed to. And you decided not to sit back and take it. You sued. So I'd love you to tell a little bit more about what happened. Like, how could they challenge the best public school in the county and tell us about your success?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and hello, everybody. What happened was in 2019, I'm in the school district of Palm Beach County, and in 2019, they put a referendum before the voters, and the referendum was for an additional, let me get this right, an additional millage of ad valorem taxes, which would amount to $200 million per year for the school district for a term of 4 years. They put language in it that absolutely excluded charter schools and said it was for district schools only. Our attorney contacted them and said, don't do this, because if you do this, we're going to come after you. Based on statute, which says that charter schools ought to be funded equally, the same as, those are the exact words, plain language, the same as public schools in the district. They went ahead and they did it anyway, and the referendum was passed, and we get none of the money. The referendum, the reason that they were asking for the money was to increase teacher salaries, to increase security, to continue to pay for art, music, PE, and additional mental health. These are critical, crucial things. They got the money. We didn't get the money. As soon as the referendum passed, we filed a lawsuit, as we promised we had done. We would do, because it really damaged us terribly. Because what they did with the raises was they gave teachers who had 1 to 5 years an extra $1,000, teachers who had 5 to 10 years an extra $5,000, and teachers who had 10 years or better an extra $10,000.
Not quality, time.
So we lost teachers. I mean, I lost 2 ESE coordinators. I lost people that have been there for any number of years. But, when you're making 45 and you're going to make 55, you have to put food on the table. So you have to, and it really, really hurt us. As far as security, everybody knows the state allocation really doesn't have anything to do with reality. So we got about half of the amount that we actually need to have an armed guard, trained and all of that. So the other half comes out of our operating funds. We did give the teachers some raises. We did the best we could, again, out of operating. our art, music, and our specials and all that come out of operating. So it really, in a situation where charter schools were developed in order to provide competition, they attempted to totally wipe out the competition. So in Palm Beach, we have about 21,000 kids in charter schools. And so the revenue to charter schools would have been $20 million a year, about, okay? And the revenue, and in my particular school where I have 1,100 kids, it's approximately $1,100 per student. So it's a tremendous amount of money, and so that's what they wound up getting. So now that referendum has been in place for 2 years. We filed a suit, and we lost I think the district court is the first one. Then we lost, but only 2-1 in the, so we were encouraged. And then we filed an appeal. We got to the appellate court, and we asked them to hear it en banc, which is all 12 of the judges. So they heard it, and we won. So we won at the appellate level, and it was 7 judges voted in our favor. The school district appealed that and said to the court, could you please look at it? We don't think you made the right choice. And we just got the information that the appellate court upheld their own choice. So right now, the stage that we're at, and this has been just a bear, right now where we're at is the fact that they can appeal it to the Supreme Court if they want. The lower court has to make a decision on, will we get it for the whole 4 years, or will we only get it for the 2 years going forward? The district is contending that, well, they spent the money already. And, we're contending, look, we let you guys know. If you didn't put the money aside the way you should have put the money aside, then that's on you. And I mean, we just saw it as discrimination, pure and simple. It's discriminatory. Charter school parents pay that tax, and it's just so ludicrous. So, our teachers have to jump through all the same hoops that districts,
right.
Everybody says, well, charter schools have no accountability. We have more accountability than the districts.
Well, hats off to you for taking that challenge. People have wanted to do that regularly. You have to stick with it, and people in other states need to. Thank you, Marie. Let me bring in John.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. John's got a similar interesting story, not necessarily about the money, but he comes from the wonderful state of West Virginia, who is the cardinal state, was our latest charter school law, but we gave you a big fat D when you passed it last year because it was bad. It was very constraining, school boards only, 3 charter schools, but that's all right. You went ahead and started the plan and the effort to start a charter. John is the president and a board member at West Virginia Academy, assistant professor at College of Business and Economics at West Virginia University. He's taught law, he's taught accounting. Prior to joining academia, he's been in business law. And you immediately took advantage of the new law to start, what would have been the first charter school, but you're in the middle of a challenge to that, even with the new law. So tell about you pass a law to get a charter school, you become the first person to apply for it, and they go, yeah, we were kidding. So, John, lots of people have followed that. What did you go through, and what does it mean for other people? Actually, we gave you an F because it was so bad. That's going to change, though, but what's going on?
Yeah, interestingly, it actually has already improved quite a bit. There's still work to be done on the law itself, but in the most recent legislative session, in large part because of the work that we did trying to vet and trying to go through the process, the legislature realized that there were problems that needed to be fixed, and they did make some positive changes recently, both for charters and more broadly for school choice. I'll get into that in a minute, but just for a little bit of background, we were, I didn't really have any aspirations to start a charter school. I moved to West Virginia to be a professor here at West Virginia University, and after being here for a period of time, we recognized that there were some pretty severe deficiencies in the traditional public school model and delivery in West Virginia. Mostly, I would say that a lot of the students that I encountered I could notice a difference between our students from Jersey and DC and New York and Pittsburgh compared to the students from West Virginia, because the students from West Virginia were dramatically less well prepared for higher education. And so that was a motivation for me as a resident of West Virginia now, and this place where I'm making my home for my family and my children. I really wanted a better education environment. And so when the charter law passed, I didn't really have any involvement in it the first time around. But after it passed, we decided to get a board together to put together a charter school. And we were able to constitute a board of outstanding experts in the areas of education, law, finance, you name it. We have a real all-star board of governors, and we filed an application. Now, under the charter law in West Virginia, if the authorizer, who initially was only school boards, refused or failed to respond within 90 days, the charter was automatically deemed approved. And so we filed in July. We filed a little bit early, and 90 days later, they still hadn't done anything. And so we were automatically approved. So we were pleased with that outcome. Then a month and a half later, we actually applied to two different boards because our authorizer contemplates our charter school contemplates two different counties. And so our authorizer is two different school boards who work together as authorizer. Well, they refused to ever meet. And so they never met. They had one of the superintendents for one of the counties, held an open forum that was only really given notice of to teachers. And so the open forum supposedly of parents was actually about 80% individuals on the district payroll. And a lot of the people from the community who heard about it through advertisements showed up and were not allowed to speak. And so it was a really, really awful process. They completely messed everything up. They took pages out of our application, said that we didn't have approvals that we did have, you name it. It was pretty bad. And it was pretty ugly. They actually contacted many of our governing board members' employers, which is completely, anyway, so that was fun. After it was over, we were sitting on a legal approval because the 90 days had passed and the board had never met. And if the board never meets, it kind of creates the same scenario where you're automatically approved. But the West Virginia Department of Education refused to acknowledge it. And so at that point, we decided to file a lawsuit. In terms of filing a lawsuit, I know you typically would start in the trial court, and then depending on how that goes, you may end up in an appellate court. And then after that, you could end up in the Supreme Court, as Marie mentioned with her situation. We decided to skip all of that and apply directly with the West Virginia Supreme Court on a matter of original jurisdiction. Unfortunately, our case was taken up by the Supreme Court, and we filed a motion to have it heard on an expedited basis, and they approved that as well. And so we've already had oral arguments on the charter school approval, and we're just waiting now, any day now, that the court could issue a decision, and we'll know if we were automatically approved. Now, in addition to that, so that may allow us to be the first charter school in West Virginia, which we would be very pleased to be.
But in the meantime, you helped create a new law that makes it much more open, right?
Yeah, and we're somewhat limited in the extent we're a 501c3 nonprofit, so we can only do a certain amount of lobbying activity. So we had to be judicious in how we did that. But I actually was able to connect with the chair of both the Senate, state Senate, and the state House of Delegates education committees, and communicate kind of what went wrong and what they could do to fix it. So they created a state board that can act as an authorizer, which was definitely a positive step. They also did some very interesting things to try to strengthen charters. They removed the authorizer's revocation powers. And so, as I know many on this call will be familiar with, authorizers can authorize, and then you have a charter for a term of years, but during that term of years, they can revoke the charter. They actually removed that power. So now if we get this court decision, we'll have 5 years where we can't really be shut down unless there's something really wrong, like a student safety issue, or there's a few exceptions where they still can, but they can't really do anything to us for 5 years. So
yeah, health safety discrimination, which is the way it should be.
Yeah, and of course, if a charter school opens up and they're putting kids in danger, then then it should be closed under any circumstance, and that remains the case under the law. But for technical violations, other things that they might seek to revoke the charter, they're no longer, those have been dramatically scaled back. So that was a positive thing. So that it's turned out to be a very good thing for the state of West Virginia. West Virginia also went from being, if I could describe West Virginia to those of you who are not familiar with it, it's almost like jumping in a time machine and going back 25 years. And that's true in a lot of respects, but especially in the public education space, right? We passed charters for the first time in 2019. And that may be shocking to many of you. And I guess there are still some states that don't have them, but that was, viewed as very, forward looking. And now, because of our experience and the changes that were made, I think the legislature's kind of become attuned to the fact that the Department of Education are not interested in changing. And so they've passed Hope scholarships, which are education savings accounts,
Right.
something that's very common for special needs students, but they've actually passed them for all students. So literally,
John, let me just stop you right there. No, that's perfect. And we love what they've done, and they went out of way above and beyond what we expected. And what it shows us, right, is that leadership obviously matters, right? Marie's talking about a challenge in Florida. They've had pushback from districts, but because they have had legislatures and governors who've been supportive of charter schools, there's not as much attempt to, limit their autonomy. What they tend to do is just write little nuisance attacks, money, autonomy, fill out more forms. You've had the same that's happened because you had leadership that both learned and some new leadership that was willing to get in there and fight. And Sean, uniquely, Washington, D.C. is the place where it was conducive to policy and law, and it's gotten challenged. And so let's make believe you're all suddenly in states where you're on the defensive again, because many people listening in our audience are in that position, and many people on a daily basis we hear from. What do you do when you're on the defensive, Sean? Like, how do you make sure that you succeed? Because you did keep DC at bay to a certain extent.
So I think this is an excellent question. And I think that for those of you who are on the line who are struggling in this way, there are some important lessons to be learned. One, we have to go back to doing the work. One of the things that I've said to the supporting community here in DC is that when I came here, because of the role that I was in, I had access to the entire education sector, the entire ecosystem. And there was not a day or a week that went by that I wasn't invited to somebody's house who was holding an event for an elected official to make sure that they were regularly having access to leaders in the education space on both sides to hear what the issues were and to come to understand what charter schools needed. And so there was very important and I think deliberate work to make sure that those who were in power understood what charter schools were doing, had an understanding of the impact that those charters were having within their communities, and saw the voting blocks that we actually represented. That waned. That started, there was almost like we rested on the laurels of how well we had done to create positive regard, and that started to fall off. So we have to make sure that we understand that those folks who have power and those individuals who have influence, that we are regularly engaging these folks. And it is important to say that I serve a community where there are 85 people, whether it be true or untrue, who think that they are gatekeepers. And so while some of them have less power, but can be an extreme nuisance, that nuisance is going to be a nuisance. And if you're trying to get a school up and running and have a high quality program, you need to make sure that the political work of being a leader is being done. You can't leave that down. And I think a lot of really high quality leaders don't want to do that political work, but the relationship building across a community is critically important. In addition to that, it is so important that you start and run a good program that is serving children. If you can't answer the question better with us by saying they're better with us, you're going to find it difficult to stand in front of bodies of people who are clearly against us, and they've got data to demonstrate that you're not doing well. So when school went out and the next day we were at 95% attendance online, shirts and ties, nobody missing, 100% of our staff there. Like, that sent a message across a set of sectors where they're literally a week after COVID hit, people, 60% of the kids they were at 60% and couldn't find 40, couldn't find 10% of their families. And we showed up at 95. And people came in to watch, to literally count, to make sure that all the kids who we were saying were there. And so you've got to make sure that your program is extremely good. You cannot allow your program to fall off, because as Marie has taught, like, if you are the best school in the county, you've got something to stand on. It's going to give you room to make the request that you would make. And so I think those two things are critical. And do not make the mistake of not engaging your families and teaching your families how to engage politically, because they are members of, neighborhood commissions and, where they can go in and say, I have families who will go in and say, no, my child went to 4 charter schools, 4 other schools before they came to this school. This school is serving my child in a way that no other school would. Nothing is happening with them. You will support them. You will vote for them. And that's power. That is enormous power. And so we have to be thoughtful about all of what we are doing. And we're very community oriented. We think a lot about our community and how our school impacts our communities in ways that you probably wouldn't normally think about, but we have found that is enormously beneficial.
Well, and it's so true, Sean, and thank you for that. Making sure that not only other school leaders that you work with, people in the community, but your parents know, hey, this came about within the last couple of decades. It could go away. By the way, we might need you. Marie, did you find that you had a lot of support from other charter schools? Do you feel like there's a camaraderie there, or no?
We did have a lot of support from other charter schools. Some of them are helping us with the legal fees, but most of them did not want to be named in the lawsuit. And we said, we don't care, because Palm Beach is not very friendly to charter schools.
Right.
And, it's been a difficult road. So what we did was we filed a lawsuit in conjunction with another charter school. And really the best part of the group of plaintiffs is, it's ourselves, the other charter school, and a couple who has 2 children. One is in a district school, one is at a charter school. And so their fight is, you are inequitably funding my children. So, and this will affect charter schools throughout the state. It's, a lot of people are watching it, and,
oh, absolutely.
You have to stand up for what you believe in. You really do. And to us, the statute was so clear. They shall be funded equally. There's just no way to misinterpret that word. And I did an op-ed, and the thing that I said was, like, looking at the security, our kids bleed red. They bleed red, just like a district kid, just like any other kid. They're going to bleed red if we don't have the proper security. Our teachers have to go through all the same hoops. They have to be certified. They have to do ESOL. They have to do reading endorsements. So why should a district teacher get $10,000 more? Why? So, our teachers work just as hard, and I think harder. And to the point you made, Sean, I was laughing because, we did the same thing. The next week the week after schools closed, we had everything up and running. We had Google Classroom, we had live lessons. We insisted on that. And, so our enrollment right now is kind of really off the chain.
It's like Michelle and others said before. I mean, the autonomy and the flexibility to have been able to do that was a blessing. Everyone was challenged by COVID. We don't discount that at all. We don't say it was the easiest thing in the world, but making it easy for school leaders to do their job and not having to fight a lawsuit or fight politically requires you to actually sometimes fight politically. Because if you don't do it once or twice,
Right. I'm very fortunate because my board is so supportive. And matter of fact, Andy Benson, I have to mention his name, was so adamant about, we are going to sue the day this thing goes into effect.
So
and we just about did. It was maybe a month, but
we will be watching that. Yeah,
prevail. Looks like we've already prevailed, but till the money's in the bank,
We will be watching that with interest. So,
Thank
John, let me
you.
go ahead to you, maybe for just a last sort of last word, and I'd love for you all to just kind of end with what everybody else needs to know out there. So I'll go John, back to Marie, and end with Sean, just with a quick, what else should people take away from what they have to do? So John, you have an arrow on your back right now, right? Kind of like this is the guy in the front who's fighting. Are you worried about it? Or do you feel like you've got kind of people behind you and others that are going to step up?
No, I think that there are a lot of people who are afraid that are silent supporters. And interestingly enough, we have a ton of silent supporters in the school district who know what we'll be doing will be better for West Virginia, who know that and they're rooting for us because they would be fired immediately for some frivolous reason if they openly supported us. They're keeping it quiet right now. And a lot of parents, until these schools actually open, there are tons of parents who really want their kids to go to our school, but they're quiet because they know that their kids could be discriminated against in the current public schools because we're somewhat a small community. So especially us in particular, my last name's True, TREU, and we're the only one in the phone book. So we have to be a little careful. But I will say that the things that are worth doing in life require some sacrifice. I'm unaware of any great leader in the history of our nation who did something that was super easy, that didn't take any sacrifice. And I think that's just the reality of being a part of the charter movement, is you're going to have to make some sacrifices. There will be trade-offs, but I found it to be deeply fulfilling. And I'm grateful for what we've been able to do so far. I'm hopeful that we can see it all the way through. But even if we can't, I am thankful that I have been able to be involved in this movement to this point.
Thank you, John. So grateful. Marie, last word for you.
I think that there's a lot of misinformation about charter schools out there that is fed by school districts. And I think that people really, I would love them to understand that we do have the same accountability, if not more. We do have the same students. We do have a whole gamut of the same problems that other schools have. And we also have the triumphs. And, you referred earlier to winning the best public school in Palm Beach County. And that was best public school, which includes district schools, and I think people just really have bought into the charter school movement. I think many people, and like I said, Palm Beach County is 21,000. And what you said before, Sean, you have to deliver the product, and you have to work hard, and you have to be politically connected, and let people know what you're doing. All the good stuff that you're doing, I think, needs to be out there because we're all doing wonderful stuff.
Thanks so much, Marie.
And
Sean, bring us home.
Me.
You're welcome. Bring us home.
If I was to close out, I would just say especially to those of you who are on the line still planning to do this, I want to say thank you. This is not hard. This is not easy, and it's getting harder. This is not easy, and it is getting harder. It's getting harder to start. The environment within which you are doing this is significantly different and more difficult than the environment within which I have done it. And so I want to say thank you for sticking to this. We did this for a reason. There are a group of kids out there who have not been served, and they need us to make these sacrifices, to make the necessary sacrifices to get this done. Finally, I'll say for those of us who've been I'm in a city where we've had a quarter century of charter law. We are not done. We are not done. We're not done with the law. We need to change it and make it better. We're not done. And we're not done with doing the work of making sure that the context allows for this kind of innovation and results for children to move forward. So we cannot make the mistake of resting on our laurels. That has gotten us in the situation where we are in now. We have to fight like we are fighting for something. We have to continue that fight. This light cannot burn out. It's too early. All the ships have not risen. We are not all rising together. We're not there yet. And so until that work is done, we owe it our focused attention. And with that, again, I'll say thank you. Thank you for agreeing to join us in this epic battle, but for the right reason. It's hard work, but it is the right work.
Amen. Thank you so much. Now you all know why we call it Profiles Encourage. We've had 9 outstanding leaders. Thanks to those of you who stuck with us, those of you who just joined us. This will be also on a recording soon, and just sending you our gratefulness and thanks for everything you've done, the 3 of you and all of our participants today. I hope it's a good, strong, and worry challenge-free Charter Schools Week for a while. And wish you great rest of your day. Be well. Thanks for everyone for joining us.